Okay, part 2, continuing on. Um, we're going to get to my point of how I think chemtrails are killing trees and crops. We started out with a review of how plants survive, ties that into the farming techniques are all wrong here, and ultimately how these same microbes affect our health. So, to finish up here on this section, some species of bacteria live inside the plant, equals endophytes. From crown to roots, bacteria trick themselves to aid the plant's growth and enhance resistance to pests. Legumes are not the only plants who rely on bacteria to meet their nitrogen needs. Alder, poplar, and willow recruit nodule-forming bacteria to help them colonize nitrogen-poor ground. Over time, these first plant colonizers drop enough leaves to build incipient soil, making way for other plants. Nitrogen fixation bacteria also live in rhizospheres of coffee, corn, and sugarcane. Growing in stems of sugarcane, nitrogen fixation bacteria, acetobacteria, and diotrophos can fix up to 150 pounds of nitrogen per acre, enough to replace chemical fertilizers. Before fertilizers, about all nitrogen in plants came from bacteria, and once incorporated into the plant, bacteria acquired nitrogen cycled from plants to soil to animals over and over. Fetching fungi. Less studied is the fungus's role. In fact, one of the chief factors contributing to disease suppression in soils at large is due to fungi. Diversity, and are far more ancient and pervasive than nitrogen fixation bacteria in legumes. And ancient origin of the fungi explains why mycorrhizal ulcerations are known for 80% of flowering plants in all gymnosperms. Non-flowering plants like conifers. Chemical signaling of fungi is less understood than the nitrogen fixation bacteria. Fungal hyphae have their own version of nod factors called mycofactors. Go back to mycorrhizae. See, the chemicals are only recently documented. This book was written in 2016, so still not understood. Symbiotic mycorrhizae extend their razor-like thin hyphae out into the soil, serving as extensions of root hairs and increase surface area of roots as much as tenfold, and provide access to otherwise inaccessible soil pores and cracks. Mycorrhizae help plants wring more nutrients and water from the soil. In turn, the plant provides the fungi with a meal of carbohydrates. Mycorrhizae also, their networks of hyphae create soils that are less prone to erosion and enhance water infiltration. Remember I said that the chemical fertilizers thrown on just get eroded away. Addressing fertilizers doesn't guarantee it will become a plant. Without the help of microbes converting nutrients into forms they can use. Soil ecology is still in its infancy compared to soil physics and chemistry. Agrochemistry has been effective at pumping up crop yields in the short term, but endanger crop yields over the long run. Overuse of agrochemicals can degrade and disable plant defenses, allowing pathogens to attack. When broad-spectrum biocides take out the good and the bad, it's the bad actors and weedy species that bounce back fastest, just like chemotherapy. People go in, they take chemotherapy, and they'll go through the remission stage because it kills everything. And then, after about 6 months, the cancer comes back with a vengeance because your immune system's done gone from the chemotherapy. I had a vet who said he'd never recommend it. You're going to die anyway. The more you use, the more you need. Only good for dealers and middlemen making money off of this crap. Just like when I had a relative dying of cancer. And it's known, I was trying to get a vitamin C drip to cure as well as make him feel better. And they refused. Even though it's only $30 to connect that up. They refused to do it. However, except for the patients they had on chemotherapy, they were giving it to them because they're making all that money off the chemotherapy because they know darn well that the vitamin C makes the patient feel better and do better during the chemotherapy. On a trip to South Africa, the author was surprised at how termites influenced above-ground ecosystems. Oops. There we are. Dotted across the landscape, termite mounds rose like hill towns. And, you notice a curious pattern. The biggest trees were the ones the elephants and giraffes were drawn to for shade, consistently grew on and close by the abandoned termite mounds. Turns out the termites have microbial helpers. Termites bring dead plant matter down into the mounds and feed it to fungi, which break it down plant tissues that are indigestible to termites. Termites harvest their fungal crops and eat it. Mounds are nutrient oases that help Africa's iconic wildlife. They built foundation for vegetation that supported herbivores that in turn fed the carnivores. Now, I'm gonna get into let's go back to this photo here. Let me find this photo real quick. Hold on. Oh, it's the nitrogen cycle here. Okay. Here's the nitrogen cycle again. Now we've got the root nodules, see, of this plant where the microbes live on and do all this conversion. Okay. Nitrifying bacteria. I think the chemtrails, these metals are spraying out of the sky, are killing the microbes and or the fungi that are essential for this plant, these plants and trees to uptake the nutrients that it needs. And if we skip over here, if we skip over here, whoops, here we go, to geoengineering watch, he's going to talk about this very thing here.
Are in the sun, how intense the sun feels. They convince themselves it's all normal because the agencies don't tell them anything else is wrong. They assume they would be told if there was something wrong. This is a very naive notion. This is a manzanita bush, a juvenile, and you see how the tips of the new growth look like they've been hit with a torch. These most hardy species of brush, the manzanita plant, they're dying throughout the forest. Whole mature organisms 10 feet high are flashing out dead. This is an extremely hardy brush species. It looks like it's been hit with a torch. These are new juvenile leaves. You can see they already look like they've been hit with a torch as well. Several that are shaded right here. The small little batch of leaves maybe is slightly shaded. It's not curling up, looking fried yet. We've had 40 plus inches of rain here in the last 2+ months. Has nothing to do with drought. This is an extremely hardy drought-resistant species. This is excessive UV. Also, we have fungal issues happening with these plants now because the bioavailable metals kill soil microbes. That allows fungal proliferation. Of the 200 species of plant and animal a day that we are losing to extinction, 70 to 80% are fungally related. Same as the human body. If you kill off the beneficial organisms, the beneficial microbes, fungus infection ensues. When people take antibiotics, they typically get fungal infections. Nature's no different. This is a slightly larger specimen of manzanita. If you look at the whole tree, it certainly does not look healthy because it's not healthy. You see it's not flowering. This plant is horrifically affected from the excessive UV, from the bioavailable metals in the rain, which kill soil microbes.
The metals in the rain from the chemtrails. That's what he's talking about. Strontium in particular. Strontium, barium, aluminum, sulfur dioxide that causes acid rain. That's what they're pumping out of the airplanes. And other things like graphene oxide.
An effect on the root systems. This is a main
affecting the root systems.
Source of food for forest animals. These flowers produce berries. Turkeys, bear, and many other species rely on this as a food source. They have no food. When this is the most a plant can produce, a couple small pods of flowers, there's nothing for the animals to eat. This is happening throughout the forest. Steep decline, even with normally very hardy specimens like this manzanita. And here's more species of manzanita. This is a silverleaf manzanita. You see smaller plants in front with the very discolored leaves. That's fungal infection. As the bioavailable metals are killing soil microbes, changing soil pHs, changing forest soil compositions, it has a horrific domino effect. Although Forest Service and USDA foresters will not admit to this implosion that's happening in the forest, it's absolutely happening. And you see even in the background, even whole specimens, mature specimens of manzanita that flash out stone dead black from fungal infection. So this mature species, stone dead, the fungal ailment that is affecting so many of the silverleaf manzanita, this tree has succumbed to it. But if you look a little bit past, here's a tree that has not yet completely succumbed to this, still putting out some flowers, but much less crown on this tree. All the trees have much less crown than they had only a few years ago. They can't take the excessive UV, so their foliage starts to decrease, dead branches start to appear, they can't leaf as well, they can't flower as well. They're simply trying to survive the exposure to the excessive UV. So some plants are stronger than others, some individual organisms stronger than others, but we're seeing a huge percentage flash out stone dead throughout the forest. It's another larger specimen of black oak. It's mid-February, it's already leafing out. It's 2 months ahead of when it should be leafing out. The leaves last fall stayed on the trees, and in late November, December, when a certain series of rains comes, we've seen this the last 4 years, all the leaves on the deciduous trees wad up dead, but still hang on the tree. As you see lower down in this tree, that's what we have. It appears to us as if some sort of defoliant is included in the aerosol spray mix, and we know fruit farmers have been using this type of method to cause their orchards to go dormant for years. This is because the temperatures have been rising so progressively. 5 years ago, we saw the deciduous trees still fully leafed with green leaves going clear into January. Now we see fully foliated native oak trees with stone dead leaves that hang on the trees all winter long. And as you see with this tree, the new leaves are coming out 2 months early, while dead leaves are still hanging on the tree and have been all winter. You can see the topography in the background. It's quite steep here, and we're northeast of Redding, California. So even in these drought years, we still have what would be considered by most standards a fairly high degree of rainfall because of orographic enhancement. We're a couple thousand feet higher than Redding, and the way the storms usually move up the Central Valley, wrings the moisture out when it hits this higher topography. It's called orographic enhancement. So for these manzanita trees to be dying, it's the drought certainly is an effect, but not the key effect, because manzanita can survive in conditions with a third the rainfall we're getting even now here in the drought-stricken years. We've had about 40 inches in this location so far this year. But now we're seeing, because the storms are not the normal low-pressure counterclockwise circulation that we've historically seen, and we know the aerosolization is going on because the lab tests prove this. The precipitation is full of the same toxic metals listed in geoengineering patents. So we're not seeing the same orographic effect that we would normally have historically seen, where in this location we get about 2.25 times the rain Redding gets. If Redding, California gets 33 inches, we get about 70 here. We don't see that discrepancy anymore. We get maybe 40 or 50% more. So the aerosolization has an effect on the rain. But with the plants, the organisms, the trees, we know in these locations here, I've been here with USDA soil scientists testing soil pHs. We have the USDA background studies, so we have a solid baseline. And we know the soil pHs here in this region have changed 10 to 12 times toward alkaline in the last 10 years. Those are astounding changes. The effect on the organisms is clear. Again, not only do we have the pH changes, but we have the microorganisms that are being killed from the bioavailable metals. We know the effect of the bioavailable metals on the root systems. With many organisms, it causes them to stop nutrient uptake, so they start to die a slow death. We know we have excessive UV now. Again, the forest ecosystem is imploding. The lack of wildlife here is very evident. It's virtually silent here in a forest that was thriving only 10 years ago. So again, the geoengineering assault from every direction is completely thwarting the web of life here in the boreal forests of Northern California.
Yeah, make that all over the United States and the world, because they're doing this. It's chemtrails, although they've banned it in Tennessee, and now Florida's presented a bill, and Texas presented a bill last week. So good for them. Still nothing here with these bums in Georgia. But I urge you all to call your representatives and keep calling till they get off their butts and do something. Taxpayer, it's just ridiculous. And I knew a doctor personally. She bought a dog for me, so I checked her reference. I know she was a doctor, and she confirmed for me. It was actually 2016, before I really believed in all this stuff. And she said, yeah, it's going on. And they run tests on the soil and water, and she'd run tests on patients, and was finding the high aluminum, barium, strontium content in their bodies too. So it's going on, and that, I guess that would include crops.
This is a native black oak. This is a mixed hardwood and conifer forest that we're in right now. This tree, the Cambrian layer, has been completely fried off the tree from the base of the trunk to the tips. All the branches that are...
I've seen that, I think. I've seen that, but I've seen the way trees look. I've seen trees fall, and I've never seen trees fall. I lived here for a long time, and I never saw trees fall.
We're exposed to the southwest side. The Cambrian layer is virtually fried off the tree. This was one of the most canopied areas in this particular canyon, and now it's an open canopy. The sun comes right through. The trees are dropping their foliage, and they're just flashing out dead. You see the tree in the foreground? That's the large Doug fir, just flashed out dead. Again, the ones around it are losing foliage. That fir's in the process of dying, is thinning out, dropping needles. Branches are being let go. As you look at the fir on the right as well, you see his branches are gnarly. You see some dead branches sticking out. Foliage is very thin. Go to the far right tree, you see another dead branch sticking out of him. He's in the process of dying. All these trees are dying in one of the most shaded, sheltered, wet areas in the canyons north of Redding and east of Lake Shasta. Firs are dying all over Shasta County, Siskiyou County. The agencies are not talking about it. They're not admitting to it. Their job is to hide it. The typical cobweb-like aerosol, wispy clouds. People mistake this for some sort of natural cloud. They're absolutely not. So we live under a toxic canopy. Everything that they spray in the atmosphere comes down. These trees that we see the tops of here are all dying, and these trees have their feet in the water. We're near the stream right now, so you see the tops are all dying from the excessive UV, and we know some of the trees that get the most water are dying the fastest because they're also getting the most toxins, where the toxic materials accumulate in the drainage areas.
I mean,
it's extremely alarming to see the decline at the rate we're seeing it here in the forest.
Satan, he runs this government.
We're now being told that the climate engineers want to start using the terms albedo enhancement or cloud reflectivity enhancement. They don't want to use the term geoengineering any longer because people are waking up to that term.
There's something wrong with
it. It seems that they've
got mental disorders.
To deceive and confuse the population as to what's going on in the skies above their heads continues, and the whole of academia is helping to hide what can only be described as crimes against humanity, crimes against nature, not just ecocide or genocide, but omnicide, the destruction of all life on Earth. And that's literally what's happening from these programs. Whatever the intent, the result is the same.
They need to be sued.
Ground, it amounts to biological warfare as well. We know we are breathing what they are spraying. And the fact that they don't point that out should be alarming to a population that is being exposed to what they're spraying.
They're drinking it too. They need to be sued. They're saying Bill Gates and all that. They need to be in jail, first of all. At the very least, they need to be sued. And the representatives that sit and do nothing, they need to be kicked out on their butts. Like these ones in Georgia. So, there you go. And well, we get into what she calls, this is the next chapter, Too Close to Home, where we get into, I think I'm going to make that part 3, where I get into these same microbes, and whether it be chemtrails or, the way they're farming, because this, that's an attack on the crops. They both affect microbes, and what microbes are in your body affects your health. And that'll be, I'll start that on part 3.